Hey everybody, welcome back. It is segment 2 of the Chris Richman Show for Thursday, May 8th, 2025. Let's get going because we got stuff to discuss. I want to start off with a little 2/8 stuff here. This is from Washington State, so home court, right? The state Supreme Court upheld the state's ban on so-called large capacity magazines. I prefer to call them for what they actually are, standard capacity. Thursday, ruling that the state can regulate magazines without violating the Constitution's right to bear arms. That's interesting because I can't see how you could make that argument. So-called high-capacity magazines, this is written by a guy named David Gutman, who apparently has no understanding of firearms whatsoever, have remained illegal to buy or sell in Washington as the court ruling has been on hold while the state Supreme Court considered the question. The legislature passed the ban in 2022. It allows for the continued possession of so-called high-capacity magazines that people already own, but bans their sale or purchase in Washington. Now, if you're like me, you go, great, then I won't buy them here. Simple as that. The ban does, quote, not violate either the Washington or United States constitutional protection of the right to bear arms because so-called large-capacity magazines are not arms within their meaning of either constitutional provision. Justice Charles Johnson wrote for the majority in the 7-2 decision. Gee, there's a shocker. 7 liberals. The ability to purchase so-called large-capacity magazines is not necessary to the core right to possess a firearm in self-defense. Really? So I guess my question would be this. Then what is? Here again. This is, by the way, for those of you who haven't figured out, this is the tack the liberals are taking now. They're going after parts that are not, supposedly, not directly related to the firearm. For example, magazines, electronic optics. I'm surprised people haven't gone after that. They're going after barrels if you're in California. One second, guys. I just saw a little friend, and I say that meaning a spider. Sorry about that. I really don't like spiders at all. Well, it's not that I fear them. I just don't like critters invading my space. This one was. Anyway, they're going after so-called non-essential parts of the firearm. So again, butt stocks, pistol grips, right, for like an AR style, flash hiders, even barrels in California, like we were saying. They're going to start running background checks on barrels now. Why? Interesting, isn't it? Pretty soon, there's in Washington State, you can't have a semi-automatic. Because it's not required, right? That's not a regular arm. Now, this is what drives me nuts. If you look at Bruin, okay? If you look at the constitutional regulation of arms, never in history, they're doing this as, well, you can't talk about those because those aren't firearms. So they want you to believe, and I don't have my AR here, of course, naturally, but they want you to believe that you don't have to have a magazine, in this case, 10 rounds, to operate the gun. It doesn't matter that the gun standard shipment, as a standard piece of the gun, it ships with a 30-round magazine, for example, with an AR. That's how it's sent to the military. And again, the purpose of the Second Amendment was to make it so that American citizens could have armament equivalent to the military of the day. Because if the government ever went nuts and tried to go British on us, we needed to be able to resist that. Let me put it this way. When the standard rifle, or the standard arm, was a smoothbore muzzle-loading musket, okay, if this had been then, they would have said, well, you don't need to have any more than enough powder for one shot or more than one bullet. That's where this is going. And it needs to be stopped right now, because right now, this idiocy, this stupid trend that the Supreme Court doesn't seem to really care about stopping needs to be stopped quickly. So-called high-capacity magazines are not weapons and are not traditionally or commonly used for self-defense. So, therefore, do not fall under the right to bear arms, Johnson wrote. In contrast, a ban on ammunition would almost certainly violate the right to bear arms, Johnson wrote, as it would render the firearm a paperweight. Okay, so let me take that in and turn that around a little bit on them. I'm not going to ban ammunition, but 10 rounds is too many. You don't need more than 10 rounds to incapacitate somebody. That's where this is going. If you read so-called Justice Johnson's opinion here, then what's the difference? But there are no firearms that require a so-called large-capacity magazine to function, he wrote. Without the right to purchase so-called large-capacity magazines, an individual may still own, possess, operate, repair, and maintain proficiency with firearms, as so-called large-capacity magazines are not a, quote, integral component, unquote, of firearms. 13 other states currently ban so-called high-capacity magazines. Justices Cheryl Gordon McLeod and G. Helen Whitener dissented and would have invalidated the law. In dissent, Gordon McLeod wrote that millions of law-abiding Americans have chosen to use semi-automatic weapons and so-called high-capacity magazines for self-defense. So, quote, it necessarily follows that the Second Amendment protects the arm-bearing conduct at issue here. The Second Amendment, she wrote, protects conduct, bearing arms, not, quote, not just inanimate objects like firearms or magazines. Exactly. The right of people to keep and bear arms. It doesn't say the right of the people to have a rifle. To keep and bear arms. The dissent also accuses the majority of, quote, the sort of interest balancing that repressive governments have historically used to suppress opposition. Oh, wow. Citing historical examples of the government banning enslaved people and Native Americans from owning guns and the Nazis confiscating guns from Jews. Guess what? They just hit it on the nail head. The whole purpose of gun control at first was to disarm slaves. To disarm anybody that could possibly get weapons to slaves. The state, in defending the law, argued that so-called high-capacity magazines are, quote, disproportionately used and disproportionately deadly in mass shootings and other horrific crimes, whereas they have little to any use in self-defense. What? Here again, using this argument, you need one round. Just one. One little round. Just one. That's it. That's all you need. That is all you need for self-defense. One round. According to this. Today's decision is right on the law and will save lives, Attorney General Nick Brown said in a prepared statement. So-called large-capacity magazines are used in the overwhelming majority of mass shootings. Really? Do you mean magazines? Just wondering. And reducing the toll of these senseless killings is vitally important. Okay. Here again. Is this law made to actually deter criminality, or is it done to repress law-abiding people? That's what this comes down to. And that I don't know why. No one has ever argued that. This decision, so-called decision, will not in any way, shape, or form stop a criminal from getting a so-called high-capacity magazine. Not at all. It won't. It can't. Criminals, by their very nature, do not follow the law. So how on earth is this going to stop them from getting them? How is it going to be, as a law, effective? It won't. All it does is it makes me, it makes you out there in the audience, it makes everybody around us that actually understands that having a magazine that can hold 30 rounds versus a magazine that can hold 10, it's kind of useful. I hate reloading. It kind of sucks. If someone breaks into my house, I don't want to have to sit there, especially if I am, got adrenaline surging through me and I miss the first 3 shots, or that person, actually has half a brain and gets out of the way. I don't want to go, crap. I have 7 shots left. And this is assuming you're actually counting, which 99.9% of people do not do, myself included. I'm not going to do, and I should. I don't want to say I have 7 shots left instead of, wow, okay, I missed on 3, but I've still got a while yet. And if the person keeps going after me for some reason, doesn't leave, I want to know that I can actually keep going defending myself. And I won't be stuck, oh crap, I ran out of ammo. I have to change my magazine. And again, adrenaline is running through your body. Your fine motor skills, unless you've trained a whole crap load of a lot, your fine motor skills are reduced. Plus, there's a chance you were sleeping. Add to that. And now you're trying to get the thing, eject the magazine, or if you're using an AK or an MP5 or something, or even your pistol, you're trying to get that magazine back into the hole and get it seated properly. Meanwhile, the time that takes, your attacker is advancing on you. What utter stupidity. And I guarantee you, good old Nicky Boy here, as well as Sideshow Bob, as well as all of the jackasses that are on this court, I guarantee you, every one of them, if they have security, they all have so-called high-capacity magazines. Overwhelmingly used in mass shootings. The law was thrown into doubt last year when a Cowlitz County judge ruled it violated both the U.S. and Washington constitutions. In ruling the law unconstitutional, Superior Court Judge Gary Bashore pointed to the U.S. Supreme Court's 2022 Bruin decision, in which the court ruled 6-3 that gun regulations must be consistent with the nation's historical tradition of firearm regulation, which, by the way, there is none. And honestly, that's one of the biggest problems I have with Bruin. Historically, there have been none. That was a stupid way to word that. Absolutely stupid. We got sold down the river a little bit on Bruin. The implications of the Bruin case have perplexed lower courts across the country. No, it hasn't. You've had a bunch of liberals who wanted to ignore it and spurred a raft of legal challenges to gun safety laws in Washington River. There's nothing about gun safety with this. Bashore wrote that the Founding Fathers had, quote, no appetite to limit gun rights, unquote, and therefore there are, quote, few, if any, unquote, ways, quote, a state can justify a modern firearms regulation. 100% accurate. They had no appetite for it because they were fighting for their lives. They were fighting for independence. They realized that the British Army, at the time the largest army in the world, was coming down on them. And, oh, by the way, they were armed to the teeth. Meanwhile, we had, the colonists meaning, had guns merely because, let's see here, this guy fought in the French and Indian War. We stole a bunch of guns from the British here. Maybe we had somebody who could actually make guns, a gunsmith rather. That was it. Though the specific technology available today may not have been envisioned, the founders expected technological advancements, Bashore wrote. The result is few, if any, historical analog laws by which a state can justify a modern firearms regulation. This was at the heart of the argument from Gator's Custom Guns, a Kelso gun shop that challenged the law. The state, lawyers for Gators wrote, failed to show that a ban on so-called high-capacity magazines fits within the historical tradition of firearms regulations. They argued that the legislature approved the ban, quote, without concern, unquote, for how it would burden the rights of gun owners. Quote, the fundamental right to bear arms is not a privilege that can be continuously winnowed by the state, unquote, lawyers Austin Hatcher and Peter Serrano wrote. Serrano is also the mayor of Pasco and director of the Silent Majority Foundation, a conservative legal group that has filed lawsuits on guns and COVID regulations. An employee at Gators Custom Guns said its owner, Walter Wentz, had no comment Thursday. The Silent Majority Foundation did not immediately respond to a request for comment. Well, they damn well better frickin' appeal this crap. 6 national gun rights groups filed separate briefs urging the Supreme Court to strike down the ban. Under the trial court's opinion, then Attorney General Sideshow Bob Ferguson wrote last year, the state would be unable to regulate, quote, AR-15s, machine guns, or even cluster bombs. Are you kidding me right now? That is not the law, Ferguson wrote. Common sense. Okay, so again, when a liberal says common sense, it is anything but. Common sense regulation of military-style weapons and accessories does not infringe the individual right to armed self-defense. Again, the right to keep and bear arms. The action of keeping and bearing arms. Okay? It's stupid. I have to fill out this piece of paperwork to keep and bear a rifle with something that is with a barrel under 16 inches. It is stupid that I have to fill out a piece of paperwork to own a piece of equipment that will make it so if I have to use my firearm and I don't have time to put earplugs in my ears, like if I'm woke up in the middle of the night, or I need to maintain situational awareness, same thing, or same example, I have to file a piece of paperwork to screw that suppressor onto the end of my barrel. Or to own the suppressor rather. Absolute, utter insanity. And, well, but you're saying that you would be okay with people buying tanks? Okay, show me someone who can afford a tank. Okay, show me. Show me someone who could go out and buy a Sherman tank. And if they can, I'm willing to bet if they're willing to spend the money to do that, they are probably not going to then run around and go, I wonder, I could probably go and rob a bank with this. Okay? Just saying. And if you're thinking, well, what about the narcos? Do you really think the narcos are going to follow the law? Oh, that's right. They don't, because they're criminals. Guys, this is not hard to understand. It really, really is not. A machine gun. Okay? Having shot a select fire weapon in the past, I can tell you, in many cases, shooting the select fire weapon is not as accurate in burst or three-round burst or full auto mode. It is not as accurate, maybe the 3-round burst, but the full auto mode is not as accurate as single shot. Why? Because you have variance. You have a muzzle raise. You have the fact you're leaning into it because you're anticipating the recoil, yada, 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 so on and so forth. Okay? But again, if you go by this, if you go by all this stuff that this idiot Nick Brown and Sideshow Bob before him argued, guess what? You need 1 round. That's all you need. That's it. That's all. We will be running, essentially you would be running a Ruger number 1. It would have no buttstock. It would probably be a muzzle loader. But even, let's just say it's a regular, a modern fire type thing. You'll be running a Ruger number 1. That is all you will be running. That's it. It will be limited in caliber. Okay? Because again, that's not, that's not limiting your ability to keep and bear arms. No. You'll be limited to 1 caliber, probably 9mm, or maybe not. Maybe it'll be something off. Maybe you'll be limited to, say, I don't know, a .380. We can't have military calibers. We'll make it like Mexico, right? Mexico, you can't have military calibers. Okay, fine. So we'll make it a .380 ACP round. There we go. It'll be a .380. It'll be single shot. It'll have to have a barrel longer than 16 inches. Okay. Let's see. What else? Oh, it won't be able to have a pistol grip, so it'll be a straight stock. Gosh, what else? golly, let me think here. You won't be able to do any modifications to it. Yeah, I think that about covers it. Sounds about right to me, don't you think? I mean, you're not limiting people from owning arms. They could buy this gun. It's not even a Ruger number 1. This is just a gun. There you go. Oh, yeah, well, yeah, we'll make it legal, Yeah. We'll make it modern fire. That's fine. Sounds good. Actually, you know what? I'm a little concerned that that 380 might be a little too strong. Why don't we just make it? Yeah, we'll make it a 22. And again, you only need 1 round. So you're limited to buying 1 round a month. You could put in for an exception, where you could actually buy more than 1 round a month. But you have to fill out this paperwork, right? Because again, we don't want you to not keep and bear arms, but boy, we also don't want you stockpiling ammunition because you might be some kind of crazy, right? You might be involved in something illegal, having it sitting there. That's where this is going. Believe you me. If you believe nothing else I say, if you agree with me on nothing, agree with me and believe me on that. Simple. All right. You tell I'm a little tweaked about that, just a touch. I hope you can, because yeah, I am. Okay. Oh, and by the way, this is the same state where, one of our state representatives, and we've talked about this, voted for an assault weapons ban, so-called assault weapons ban, but then, had practice with said assault weapon. Yeah. Okay. Let's move on. That's holy cow. I want to talk I do want to talk for just a second about Elon. So Elon, they had an interview with his dad, and his dad said that the thing that turned Elon into a Trump supporter and away from so-called Democrats, made him a Republican, they say. I think he's more populist than anything else. But his dad says it is because the Biden administration snubbed Elon when they had this big electric thing. Let me just read it. Elon Musk said his son was, quote, annoyed, unquote, that the Biden administration did not invite Tesla, the biggest electric vehicle maker in the U.S., to a White House event in August of 2021, where the former president signed an executive order laying out the government's carbon emissions goals. Okay. Let me put it to you this way. That's part of it. That may be part of it. But they won't tell you the real reason why Elon left the Democrat Party, so to speak. And it wasn't a car thing. It was this. It was his son. That's why. Elon has a son who fell victim to the so-called transgender cult. And is basically lost to him. That's what pissed him off. That's what turned him. That's what God used to pull the scales from his eyes. That's what it was. The car thing, okay, that's fine. That wasn't what caused it. That may have been the last straw, perhaps, but it was already done by then. As my old coach used to say, or my old boss used to say, at that point it was all done but the crying. Yeah. So just be aware of that. If anybody ever tells you, well, Elon Musk left the Democrats and started supporting Trump because of cars, because Biden snubbed him. No, it wasn't that. It was not that at all. Like I said, that might have been the final straw, but it wasn't the reason. All right, let's take a quick music break, and then we will be back, and we will get to other topics. Gotta love the bluegrass. And I do. I really do. I love my bluegrass music. You guys know that. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about some other liberalism stuff here. I wish I could say this is part of Stupid Libs, but it's not anyone particular. No, it's the whole movement in this case. The tease for this, and this is in, let's see here, this is in Grist. I don't know what that is, but it was posted by the magazine Grist, I guess it is. And here's the title. Coming this summer, record-breaking heat and plenty of hurricanes. This is put out by someone named Matt Simon yesterday. Let's go ahead and read this article, shall we? With less than a month to go until summer, weather forecasters have been dropping some troubling news on what might be in store. AccuWeather has already predicted an especially active season, which begins June 1st, with up to 10 hurricanes out at sea, and its meteorologists are now forecasting a hotter than normal summer on land. Last week, the company warned that the 3 months could bring, quote, sweltering heat, severe weather, intense wildfires, and the start of a dynamic hurricane season, unquote. An echo of last summer, which was the hottest on record. In some places, like coastal cities along the Gulf Coast, those hazards could combine into dangerous, quote, compound disasters, with heat waves and hurricanes arriving back to back. So, are you scared yet? Because that's the whole point of this article, is to scare you. The reader, the consumer of information. That's the whole point of this article. Here's the thing. I can come out and say, well, you know what? I'm predicting that the stock market will go up over 50,000 this year. And when it does, there'll be this much buying, and the gross domestic product will do this, that, and the other, all these things, right? Well, here's the thing. If I'm a conservative and I make that estimate and I make that prediction and I'm wrong, I will be, again, laughed at, mocked, made fun of, impugned, whatever. If I'm a liberal, especially when it comes to the climate, if I am a liberal and I make that prediction, if I'm a liberal magazine, a liberal politician, a liberal quote, unquote, scientist, so to speak, and I'm wrong, no big deal. It'll disappear. It'll be forgotten. No one will care. I mean, hell, it might actually get me promoted if I'm wrong. Because, why? I scared people. I predicted doom and gloom. That's the big thing. And of course, you're reading that first paragraph, right? And again, that's meant to scare you. Well, now they're going to tell you in the second paragraph who you're supposed to blame for this. Let's read that, shall we? The Trump administration's cost-cutting crusade can make this summer's weather all the more perilous. I'm scared. It's all because of the bad orange man, because of literal orange Hitler. Mass layoffs at the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, have hurricane forecasters worried that they'll lose access to the data they need to make accurate predictions of where the storms will make landfall and at what intensity. They'll lose access to the data? What's the data going to go? These guys aren't working here anymore. See ya. Peace. I'm out. You know what? I got used to dealing with Bob, and I don't want to give myself to anybody else but Bob. He was awesome. I liked Bob a lot. Stu over there, though, you know, they laid Bob off. Stu's just kind of an idiot. I don't want to deal with him. I'm walking away. This is the data talking. They're going to lose access to the data. How? What is the computer going to go, yeah, you know what? I'm not going to make the data. I'm not going to do it. I don't agree with having all these people in here and you guys, you know, being able to predict me, so I'm not going to make the data. Do you understand how stupid this sounds? I'm illustrating absurdity by being absurd there. That's one thing I learned at the knee of Rush Limbaugh. Anyway, as the electricity gets more expensive. What? Okay, hold on. That they'll lose access to the data they need to make accurate predictions of where storms will make landfall and at what intensity. As the electricity gets more expensive and and global warming forces households to run their air conditioners more, advocates worry that the loss of federal support for people struggling to pay their electrical bills could leave a swath of the population especially vulnerable. What just happened? This article, this article tied two things that have no relation to each other and attempted to put them together. What? Actually, three things. So they put in cost cutting, right, for the federal government. They put in data, loss of data, which, again, we just discussed doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And now they're talking about electricity getting more expensive. That's three things that are independent of each other that they just tried to tie together. And I would argue they did it about as effectively as a dog with no tail trying to chase its tail. I mean, that's just stupid. Okay. Let's okay. Well, here now maybe we'll get some clarity on this, right? Trump's proposed 2026 budget unveiled last week would cancel the low-income home energy assistance program. LIHEAP? How ironic. Which provides $4 billion a year to help people pay electricity bills, said Allison Kofi, senior policy analyst at the Boston-based nonprofit Initiative for Energy Justice. Gee, wonder what side of the aisle they're on. Quote, we are about to experience one of the hottest summers on record, said Kofi. And this is happening at a time when the U.S. households are really, really struggling to pay their utility bills. Okay, so let me put it to you this way. If your utility, okay, be it like Con Edison or here in Grant County, the Grant County PUD, or, what's it called over on the west side? It doesn't matter. Who cares? If your energy utility has executives that are getting paid into the 6 and 7 figures, if they are replacing their vehicles every 2 years, maybe, just maybe, it's not the federal government's assistance that's, keeping costs low. If you're having trouble paying the bills, but by God, you've got the latest state-of-the-art home surround system, you've got an electric car, and, oh, by the way, your cell phone is plugged in almost 24/7, maybe, just maybe, it's not the federal government's fault that your electricity bills are high. I'm just going to throw that out there for you. Maybe, just thinking off the top of my head here. Or maybe you like to have the lights on at all times. Just wondering. Or maybe your windows are open while the air conditioning's on, or the door is open because you like to walk back in and out of the house. AccuWeather, let's go back to the article. AccuWeather's summer forecast isn't the kind you get for your local weather. So they can't tell you if it'll be raining in your town on the 4th of July. Instead, this seasonal forecast looks at weather trends in March and April, as well as larger phenomena like La Nina and El Nino, the two bands of warm or cold water in the Pacific Ocean that influence the atmosphere above the western U.S. AccuWeather compares all that to how these spring and summer months looked in previous years to get an idea of what might fold around this time. So it's making a guess. And again, that's all fine and good. Our guess is always accurate? No. And it's saying, well, it's the trend. Okay. So I guess part of this too is okay. If that's the case, again, what are you supposed to do? People that live in areas where there's hurricanes and floods and whatnot, they generally know, hey, by the way, there's hurricanes and floods here. Or, hey, it gets hot here, weirdly enough, during the summer. Strange, right? So instead of trying to scare the living hell out of them like this, why not say, hey, guys, so make sure before it gets hot out that you have plenty of water, that you have shade, and, oh, by the way, make sure you have a way to, take care of yourself, basically. I don't know, maybe, just maybe. But of course, that wouldn't sell newspapers and it wouldn't scare people and it wouldn't get them blaming conservatives or Trump in this case. Big surprise. All right, guys, this was a little bit shorter segment and sorry about that. But I wanted to get a second segment in today. I didn't do it yesterday, and even a shorter segment is still something. So this has been the second segment of the Chris Richman Show for Thursday, May 8th, 2025. Had to think about that for a second there. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you have a great day. And of course, as always, above all things, God bless you.